At Arlington National Cemetery, silence isn't just an absence of noise, it's a sacred command. The tomb of the unknown soldier rests at the heart of that silence, a monument guarded 24/7 by elite sentinels trained not only in ceremony, but in unwavering resolve. Each step they take is precise. Each turn is a tribute. Each hour of their duty is a vow. And some people don't get that. It was a Tuesday afternoon in early spring. Clouds hung low over the marble stones, and a cool breeze whispered through the rows of white headstones that stretched like ghostly sentinels across the grounds. The crowd around the tomb was modicum tourists, a few reverent veterans, school groups, and one man who didn't belong. Staff Sergeant Marcus Hale was on duty. He was tall, built like an iron beam, and moved like a metronome. 21 steps, pause. 21 seconds, turn, repeat. His dark sunglasses reflected the world, but his focus was inward, his mind balanced between duty and discipline. Marcus was a former recon Marine. He'd seen real war, jungle ambushes, urban chaos, nights where every breath was a gamble. But now, in the uniform of the Tomb Guard, he carried out a mission quieter, but no less sacred. He wasn't just marching, he was honoring. That was when he arrived. Troy Tank Delaney was 6'4", 260 pounds of beer-fueled arrogance. He wore a sleeveless leather vest over a sleeveless hoodie, revealing tattoos he barely remembered getting. Tank wasn't a veteran. He wasn't a patriot. He wasn't even sober. He was a YouTube stuntman, self-declared alpha male influencer with a penchant for clowning on military myths. And today, his followers had dared him to do the unthinkable. Live in front of the tomb? You want to go viral. One of his buddies had said, "Phone already rolling. March up and call that soldier out. Bet he don't even blink." Tank grinned, cracked his knuckles, and made his way through the crowd. Staff Sergeant Hale didn't look up. His boots tapped, a steady rhythm on the black mat that bordered the tomb. His rifle rested in perfect alignment. His breath matched the rhythm of each movement. 20-1 steps Taw's Tank was already yelling, "Yo, Robocop." He shouted, swaggering past the rope barrier meant to keep the crowd at a respectful distance. "What's with the toy gun, huh? You gonna point that at me if I don't say, sir?" The crowd stiffened. Some thought it was a prank. Some looked around for security. A middle-aged woman holding her son's hand whispered, "This isn't a place for games." Tank took another step forward, laughing louder now. "Or you just scared to speak because they trained you to shut up and march." Staff Sergeant Hale didn't blink. He turned perfectly timed and resumed his path. Calm, collected, unshaken. Tank's grin widened. He turned to his phone camera. "Look at this guy. This dude's a statue with a bad haircut. I bet I could get a reaction out of him." He turned back toward Marcus, crossing the final boundaries, stepping directly onto the mat. Gasps erupted from the crowd. An elderly man, wearing a faded Vietnam vet hat, muttered through clenched teeth that boy's about to learn. Tank raised, his arms wide. "Hey, Saldir boy, come on, you trained to protect this place, right? Show me what you got." Staff Sergeant Hale stopped. For the first time, he faced Tank directly. His voice was quiet. "Cold, you are standing on hallowed ground. Remove yourself immediately." Tank sneered. "Or what?" He stepped forward. The crowd braced. Marcus's body tensed, but only slightly. His hand shifted just enough to let the rifle drop to his side. Change his stance. Didn't take off his glasses, but the shift in energy was unmistakable. Tank cocked his arm, grinning like a man who thought this would all be a joke. "Come on, pretty boy. Let's see what the government taught you." He lunged on. What happened next lasted less than a second. Marcus sidestepped, pivoted with the fluid precision of a man who had once cleared entire rooms with no second chances. And with one motion crack, his fist connected with Tank's jaw. The sound was sharp, wet, final. Tank's body collapsed sideways like a marionette with its strings cut, teeth scattered across the marble. Blood splashed onto his own shoes as he hit the ground, his body twitching once, then still. Phones were still recording. A woman screamed. A man near the front muttered, "Holy hell!" and Marcus. He stepped back into formation 20-1 steps. Pause, turn, unshaken, unapologetic, unmoved security. Rushed in, crowd parting like the sea. Tank was groaning now, cradling his jaw, coughing blood through shattered molars. His phone had skittered across the ground and landed screen up, still streaming. "Get him out of here," someone barked. "Call an ambulance." As they hauled Tank to his feet, his followers were nowhere to be found. Only silence remained, and Marcus still marching, still guarding, still honoring the nameless heroes who never got to come home. The video was online within the hour. 3 angles, full sound, slow motion replay. Tomb guard drops TikTok tough guy in one punch. Instant justice. The headline lit up news feeds like a bonfire in a dry field. TikTokers reposted it. Vets saluted it. Morning shows debated it. But none of that noise reached Marcus Hale. He stood in the barracks that night, still in uniform, polishing his boots. The blood was gone, cleaned by Arlington staff. The crowd had long since dispersed, but the weight of that single moment hadn't. He hadn't thrown that punch out of anger. Not from pride. He threw it because someone had stepped on the sacred. Still, regulations were regulations. The incident had triggered a full review. Now his commanding officer, stiff-backed colonel with a silver star and zero tolerance for spectacle, stood across from him. "You know what the press is saying?" The colonel said. Marcus didn't respond. "You also know the Army won't publicly condone violence on sacred grounds, no matter the provocation." Still, silence. "But you followed protocol," the colonel admitted. "You issued a verbal warning, you maintained bearing, and when physically threatened, you responded with force proportionate to the threat." The colonel's lips twitched slightly. "Was that almost a smile? Between us, Hale? Good damn shot." Marcus nodded once. "Thank you, sir. You're confined to quarters until the review concludes. Don't speak to the press. Don't post anything. You're a ghost." "Understood." "Yes, sir." The colonel turned to leave, but paused at the door. "That thug? He's pressing charges. Broke his jaw in 3 places. 4, lost teeth. Claims you assaulted him unprovoked." Marcus raised a brow. "We've got 3 videos, 15 witnesses, and his own live stream saying, 'Watch me mess with this fake soldier,'" the colonel said. "But we have to play it by the book." "Understood." As the door clicked shut, Marcus sat down, removed his gloves, folded them precisely. He wasn't worried about charges. He was worried about what came next. 3 states away, Troy Tank Delaney sat in a hospital bed, his jaw wrapped in gauze and painkillers barely keeping him conscious. His left eye was swollen shut. The mirror was his enemy now. He looked less like a fighter and more like a cautionary tale. His agent stood at the foot of the bed. Arms crossed. "You're trending." For all the wrong reasons, Tank mumbled something unintelligible. His agent sighed. "Sponsors are pulling out. Your TikTok got banned. YouTube's reviewing your channel for harassment." More mumbling. "Yeah," the agent said coldly. "Maybe. You shouldn't have called a national hero a wind-up toy." Tank tried to sit up, winced, fell back. "You don't get it, do you?" The agent continued. "That man guarded the tomb of the unknown soldier. You mocked sacred ground and got wrecked on camera. You're a walking meme," Tank groaned. The agent checked his phone, and get this, veterans groups are raising money to send the tomb guard a thank you plaque. By the end of the week, over 12 million people had seen the video. Veterans posted duets saluting Marcus. Teachers played the clip in civics class under the headline, "Honor and Consequence." The clip reached Capitol Hill. A congressman posted it with the caption, "Respect is not optional. Well done, soldier." But back at Arlington, Marcus Hale kept marching. He didn't watch the news, didn't read the comments. He just did what he always did. 20-1 steps, pause, turn, repeat, until one day, during his off shift, he was summoned to the chapel room near the cemetery's heart. Inside, seated in the pews, were 5 men in crisp dress blues, 4-star generals, advisors, the Secretary of the Army himself, and standing quietly among them was a woman, her hair silver, her coat black, in her hand a photo. Marcus stepped in, saluted. The secretary nodded. "At ease, Sergeant." The woman turned. "My name is Ellen Carter," she said gently. "My son, Daniel. He was killed in Fallujah in 2004. He's buried here." Marcus inclined his head. "I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am. He always talked about honor," she continued. "About sacrifice. About doing the right thing when no one else would." She looked at him now, eyes misty. When I saw what you did, I felt like my son's memory was protected, like someone still stands watch. She stepped forward and placed the photo in Marcus's hand. It was a grainy picture of a young Marine smiling beneath his helmet. "He would have wanted you to have this," she said. "He would have understood." Marcus swallowed hard. For the first time, the emotional wall cracked just slightly. "Thank you, ma'am." The Secretary of the Army cleared his throat. "We've reviewed the incident thoroughly, and while certain optics may cause discomfort, the reality is clear." He stepped forward. "You acted with restraint, precision, and loyalty. You did your duty." He extended a velvet box, and in recognition of defending the sanctity of one of our nation's most sacred sites off duty, under threat and without hesitation, is my honor to award you the Army Commendation Medal. A pause, and unofficially the Secretary added with a smirk, "A hell of a right hook." The room broke into soft laughter. Marcus stood straighter, eyes glinting just slightly beneath the formality. He hadn't done it for medals. He'd done it for the silence, for the memory, for the ones whose names no one would ever know, and he would do it again tomorrow. In the weeks that followed, the story didn't fade. It grew. A news network produced a short documentary called The Man Who Guarded the Guard. Children wrote letters to the Tomb Guard unit, addressed to the soldier who stood tall. And somewhere in Texas, a bar had hung a still from the video on the wall with the caption, "Respect the uniform or meet the marble." But Marcus remained unchanged. He stood watch, he walked, he turned, because that tomb still needed guarding, and as long as it did, he'd be there, marching on until his legs failed, or until the next fool stepped too far. The ceremony was quiet. It wasn't broadcast. There were no cameras, no microphones, just a folded flag, a silver bugle, and the endless white markers that stretched across Arlington like rows of unsung hymns. Staff Sergeant Marcus Hale stood at attention, not on duty, but in dress uniform, invited to speak, but not required to. He preferred it that way. This wasn't about him. They were dedicating a new plaque at the side of the tomb, small inscription, meant to remind future generations, not just of sacrifice, but of sanctity. It read, "Here lies honor, guarded not just by steps, but by resolve." A few guardsmen stood nearby. The rest were visitors' mothers, fathers, kids tugging at sleeves, and scattered among them more veterans than usual, some with canes, some with scars, all with stories that would never be told on camera. One man stepped forward, a retired Marine Corps Master Gunnery Sergeant, eyes clouded with age but lit with fire. He placed a coin on the edge of the tomb railing, tapped it once, and stepped back. No one spoke, but everyone understood. Across the country, the fallout from the punch had transformed into something larger. Veterans groups rallied behind Marcus. Hale not to praise violence, but to spotlight the line between freedom of speech and desecration of sacred ground. Memorial foundations raised funding for educational programs that would teach visitors about the tomb's history and the discipline of its guards. One school district in Kansas created a new elective, Symbols of American Service. The first lesson, Why We Don't Cross the Mat. Marcus never commented publicly, never made a statement. He declined every interview, every network offer, every podcast invitation. He just kept walking his 21 steps. He didn't need to say anything. The video had said it all. Troy Tank Delaney eventually recovered, at least physically. His jaw had to be wired shut for weeks. His mouth would never quite close right again. A slur remained in his speech, a permanent reminder of a moment he couldn't delete. He tried to pivot, calling it a prank gone wrong. Said it was misunderstood performance art. But the internet had already moved on. No one wanted redemption arcs. Not for that. Sponsors didn't come back. Neither did his audience. The last video he ever uploaded, entitled, "I Regret Everything," was a blurry apology filmed in the front seat of his truck. He tried to sound sincere, but the internet had long since replaced him with another meme, another clip, another punchline. His 15 minutes weren't over. They had been broken. Scattered like his teeth across the marble of Arlington. Meanwhile, Marcus Hale's story became legend. But he didn't chase it. He stayed at Arlington. And with time, the noise faded. The articles stopped, the hashtags cooled, and all that remained was the march. One day, months later, a young boy stood by the rope line at the tomb, gripping his grandfather's hand. His backpack was covered in military patches, and Marcus stepped away. The boy tugged his granddad's sleeve. "Is that him? The one from the video?" The grandfather nodded. "It is." "Did he really punch a bad guy?" "Yes," the man said. "But that's not why we respect him." "Then why?" The old man looked at Marcus, who stood now with his replacement, sharing a silent nod between soldiers who understood weight without words. "Because he stood still," the grandfather said. When everyone else looked away, he stood still. The boy didn't fully understand, but he wrote it down anyway. He would, one day. That evening, as dusk rolled across the cemetery, Marcus took his time walking back to the quarters. He passed rows of headstones, each one with its own story. Some had flowers, some had coins, some had nothing at all. He paused at one of friends. The inscription read, "SGT David Moore, USMC, 1985 to 2009, beloved son, fierce friend, fallen but not forgotten." Marcus knelt, resting a hand on the cold stone. "Still watching, brother?" he said quietly. "Still got the post?" He stood, straightened his jacket, and kept walking. Later that year, a book was published, Guardians of Silence, The Lives Behind the Tomb. It featured short stories, reflections, and interviews with past tomb guards. Marcus Hale was mentioned in only one paragraph. It didn't describe the punch. It didn't mention the video. It simply read, "SGT Marcus Hale served with distinction, known for his precision, discipline, and resolve under pressure." His presence reminded us that guarding the fallen means guarding not just a space, but a principle. That was enough. That was everything. And if you ever visit Arlington National Cemetery and find yourself standing in the hush before the tomb of the unknown soldier, watch carefully. You may see him, the tall soldier, in mirrored shades, taking 21 steps, pausing, turning, then marching. Again, each step, a promise. Each turn, a memory. Each moment, a reminder that even in a world full of noise, some honors are defended in silence. And for those foolish enough to test that silence, they may just find themselves leaving with a story they'll never live down, and fewer teeth than they came with, because at Arlington, respect isn't optional. It's the price of standing on sacred ground. This is Hidden Sparks. And that was the story of the man who marched forward, so a nation would never forget.